is Paul, the MMA Shark, coming at you on UFC 283 Eve. UFC pay-per-view season gets started in full force tomorrow night, live from Brazil. Exciting. You know, the last time there was a UFC card in Brazil was right before the world shut down. You know, they had that card in Brazil in early 2020. And before you knew it, everything was shut down. Travel was shut down. There was no events for 4.5 months. Abu Dhabi Fight Island then followed it. So, you know, as far as Brazil, it's going to be hopping tomorrow night. It's going to be rocking tomorrow night. UFC returning to Brazil, a card of this caliber, definitely won't get slept on. And I think the UFC has put together a pretty good card. They're already overshadowing this card with UFC 285, but I think it's a really good card tomorrow night. I think it's somewhat of a prospective card. You know, we have a lot of Dana White contender alumni and some UFC debuts on this card. What that does is throws a wrench in this as far as handicapping it. And the casual MMA bettor may get smoked tomorrow night. If you're signed up with me right there, the MMAShark.com, chances are you're going to have a better night than doing this blindly. Quick recap, last Saturday night was the first UFC of the year. The prelims started okay. First two fights we were good. I hit a skid. I hit a 5-fight skid on the preliminary card. We went into the main card down units. I then continued to totally sweep the main card. Profit secured in all 5 fights, 3 of which were plus money. Finishing it off with the big win, the 5-unit max play on Sean Strickland. It was always Sean Strickland in that fight. Imavov was not ready for Strickland. Size matters. Strickland is someone I'm just not giving up on. To this day, I still say he beat Jared Cannonier. So, really good start to the year on that. Really good LFA card last weekend. I went for over 4 units. Wednesday night, the subscribers were treated. I went 5-2 on Invicta FC. And let me tell you something. Good work, Invicta. 7-fight main card. None of them were boring. All 7 fights were awesome. 5-2 on the fight. 5-2 on the card for 6.5 units. Christina Williams was the co-main event. I had her winning that fight 48-47. She dropped a decision. 2 judges had it 48-47 the other way. With open scoring on Invicta, you always see where they're at. Judge 2, whoever he was in this fight, should be in jail. He scored it 50-45 for Souza. Arguably, Christina Williams won rounds 1, 2, and 4. Nonetheless, not a big deal. The night went for 6.5 units. The previous LFA went for 4.5 units, and the last UFC was ever so slightly profitable at plus 3 units, where it looked like it was going to be one of the 19% nights, and by 19% nights, I mean a losing UFC card, but by sweeping the main card. And really, that's what I had to do in that. And I did it without chasing. You know, I swept the main card on 3, 4, 5 unit plays, 1 through 5 unit plays. So, awesome start to the year for the MMA Shark, plus 500 and now 16 units since the start of January last year. That's a big number. Consider getting a membership. Sign up. Never a better day than tomorrow. I promise there is a QR code embedded into the website right now. It gets you 50% off your first month. I promise. Come February 1st, that code is gone because the MMA Shark has the biggest announcement in the history of the company. An announcement that I didn't think I'd get to this level of what I'm doing for 10 to 15 years. And this announcement is absolutely groundbreaking. Come February, that deal is gone. You know, half off is absolutely gone. Overhead goes up. Results are going up. This would be the time to join if you're looking to get a little special deal. And to be honest, to get the next 30 days for $50 is somewhat of a no-brainer considering I've got like 17 cards in the next 30 days, especially with PFL Contender Series returning, some big LFA cards about to hit. Bellator has 2 events coming up, and UFC, other than next weekend, is going every weekend for the unforeseeable future. So tons of good MMA coming up, tons of tickets to cash coming up. www.themmashark.com. Check it out, sign up, you'll never regret it. And, if you sign up and you don't profit in the first 30 days, message me. You got February on me. You're guaranteed to profit. And I say you should profit based on my units. If I'm up 42 units and you say you're down, well, you did something wrong. But my system has not been flawed in 8 years, and I'm not making any changes to it. I'm just getting better and better. And that's why I am the world's #1 MMA handicapper. So I'm going to dig into tomorrow's card a little bit. We got a full fight card. Everyone made weight today. I couldn't actually believe it, but everyone made weight, which is a great sign going ahead of it. Makes my life a lot easier, too. MMA Shark juice. So kicking off UFC 283 from Rio tomorrow night, we have Daniel Marcos versus Simon Oliveira. A lot of money's been coming in on Daniel Marcos on this fight. Simon Oliveira has already competed in the UFC. He made his UFC debut versus Tony Gravely in his last fight, and he did not necessarily look good versus Tony Gravely. He was somewhat stiff in this fight. Gravely, a D1 Appalachian State wrestler, is definitely not an easy task to make your UFC debut on. Simon Oliveira had a very good pro career coming through the regional ranks. Took on quality competition. He certainly didn't pave his way to the UFC with easy fights. Daniel Marcos somewhat did. A lot of his fights you really can't find footage on. Some fights that were in Peru and for Sparta Fighting Championship. But he's undefeated. I mean, he's on a 19-fight win streak. He's 13-0 as a pro, and he was a 6-0 amateur. He's fighting out of Los Perros Serranos, definitely coming in as not the crowd, the fan favorite. Simon Oliveira will have the crowd in this fight. And, for Simon, this is a do-or-die fight. He's 0-1 in the UFC. He's 31 years old. He made it to the UFC by the slightest of ways in his fight versus Jose Alde on Dana White Contender Series. For Daniel Marcos, it's going to be how this fight pans out. He's the better striker, but Simon is absolutely better on the ground. With that said, Simon has a lot of rear naked choke finishes. I don't see Daniel Marcos as a fighter that is going to put himself in that spot. I think he's going to try to keep it standing. It's almost like another matchup like he had to get to Dana White Contender Series versus Brandon Lewis, where he just did what he had to do to win the fight. If it stays on the feet, Marcos has a really good chance. If it goes to the ground, Simon Oliveira's got a really good chance. Listen, this is fight 1 of 15, and this is a fight that can go either way. I don't recommend going crazy on it. I absolutely will have a play on it, but it's not going to be anything wild. So, fight 2, Josiane Nunes, 9-1, taking on Zara Ferm. We have a good matchup here. Zara Ferm is coming off 2 losses to 2 really good opponents, though. She was finished in both. She was knocked out by Felicia Spencer, and she was choked out by Megan Anderson back in 2019. This is her first fight in nearly 3 years, taking on Josiane Nunes. If you've watched Josiane Nunes fight, wow, she hits like a freight train. Her last fight versus Romana Pasquale, she was throwing bombs in that fight. Similar record to Ferm as well. She was 6-2 at the time. All of her fights prior to that were by stoppage win, other than a regional loss to Talia Santos. Of course, she had the huge knockout win over Bay Malecki on UFC Fight Night back in August of 2021, but Bay was only 2-0 at the time. So, Josiane Nunes is getting a lot of hype that she's going to get an easy knockout in this fight. I'm not sold on that so much being the guarantee. I think it's going to be a closer fight than the odds are implying, and I'm constantly checking the odds. She is minus 540 right now, so that's a big number for a female fight. I gotta imagine under 2.5 is minus 175, so Vegas is in agreement that this fight's probably not going to go to the distance. I just think that Zara is a bit tougher than she's getting credit for. When you look at those 2 losses she had by finish, they were to Felicia Spencer and Megan Anderson. Josiane Nunes is a little bit of a smaller fighter, but she does have bombs in her hand. And if she catches her clean, she's gonna do some damage. But She is 5'2", where Zara Farin is 5'8", 36 years old, though, so Nunes has everything going for her in this fight. So we'll have to see what happens. Me personally, as a handicapper, even if I think Nunes is going to win, there's no shot in hell I'm laying minus 540 on a fight like that. Warley Alves versus Nicholas Dalby. This fight is a total coin flip, and the odds imply that. We have got minus 115 on each side. Neither fighter coming in streaking by any means. Alves has lost 3 of his last 5, as to where Dalby has won 3 of his last 5 with 1 draw and 1 loss in there. Dalby coming in out of Denmark. He had an impressive win over Claudio Silva back in July of last year. He dropped a tough decision to Tim Means. Also defeated Daniel Rodrigues back in November of 2021. Daniel Rodrigues has proven to be a tough out. Warley Alves, Brazilian. He's a veteran. He's been around for a while. He is now 32 years old. He is coming in, like I said, losing 3 out of 5. A brutal knockout loss in his last outing to my Philadelphia boy, Jeremiah Wells. UFC, if you're watching, get Jeremiah Wells a fight. I know no one's really lining up to fight him. I think the fight to make is Jeremiah Wells versus Phil Rowe at the Barclays Center on Easter Eve. I'm calling for that fight. It just makes complete sense. You got 2 welterweights on pure knockout streaks. Phil Rowe versus Jeremiah Wells. I am good friends with both of them, so I would be okay if they didn't make this fight. But for business purposes, God, UFC, Jeremiah Wells versus Phil Rowe. Put it on the main card. Make it the feature fight of a pay-per-view. Pay these guys. They're worthy of it. So, Warley Alves is kind of kill or be killed in this. His wins and losses have come by stoppage. He hasn't seen a decision in 6 years. It's a coin toss fight. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think it's going to be a pretty even fight. We'll have to see which route I go on it. These are the fights that I get right, the closer odd fights. So we will see where we're at on that one. The Bonfim brothers. If you've watched Dana White's Contender Series last year, you've seen Ismail Bonfim on there, same night as his brother. Both got signed to contracts. Ismail Bonfim is getting thrown right into the fire here, right into the wreckage here, because he is fighting T-Rex Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney's only loss in the UFC came over Drew Dober. He had Drew Dober dead in this fight. If you saw the fight on UFC Fight Night last year in March, Drew Dober was almost out cold, and it was one of the biggest comebacks I've ever seen in my life. He did bounce back from that loss, McKinney did, where he defeated Eric Gonzalez last August. Prior to that, he knocked out Matt Frevola. And if you saw Matt Frevola's last couple fights, he is a prolific knockout artist. But Terrence McKinney does tend to get a little bit reckless in his fights. And one thing that Ismail Bonfim has shown in his fights is that he is very cautious in what he does. He throws smart. He's willing to take one to give one. He's not going to stand there and be a punching bag for Terrence McKinney like Drew Dober was. Fan point of view, be excited for this fight. Any Terrence McKinney fight is extremely exciting and explosive. As far as betting this fight, I'm personally going to have a small play on this fight because you have Bonfim coming in a UFC debut at home and on a very big hot streak. He has not lost since he fought. He lost to Renato Moicano in 2014. He could have been in the UFC in 2014. Should he have won that fight over Renato Moicano in 2014? He probably gets signed to the UFC instead of Renato Moicano. So, he hasn't lost in 9 years. He is riding a 12-fight win streak. Terrence McKinney is streaky. This fight can go either way. I was just curious and had to check Tapology. 80% are on Terrence McKinney in this fight. 72% by knockout. I don't see Terrence McKinney just going out there and flatlining Ismail Bonfim in Brazil, but I do see him going out there and attempting it, so anything is certainly possible. All in all said and done, I think it's going to be an extremely good fight, an extremely close fight. And again, not an extremely bettable fight. There's some fights on this card that I'm just, oh my God, I got a max play on it. And There's other fights on this card that I'm just like, okay, we're going to put some beer money on it. At the end of the day, I'm not selling fight picks. I'm selling a system that is long-term profitability. www.themmashark.com. Sign up. You get text alerts. Not even text alerts. You get the place texted to you. You have to do nothing. Once you get that text, if you have a question, just reply to the text. It comes right to me. You're communicating with me throughout the whole card. So outside of that fight, we move on to the next prelim, which is Cody Stamann versus Luan Lacerda. Both coming into this fight with separate scenarios here. Cody Stamann, 33 years old, prolific wrestler. Hit a very cold spot in his career. Was choked out by Syed Nurmagomedov. He lost a decision to Merab Duvashvili and a decision to Jimmy Rivera. But his last fight versus Eddie Wineland, he looked good. Dismantled him in the first round. But Eddie Wineland's done. Not that Eddie Wineland ever really got started. I was never really high on him. What I am high on is the wrestling of Cody Stamann. Luan Lacerda does not have good takedown defense at all. He does have good jiu-jitsu, though. Another one, making his UFC debut, coming in off of LFA. He just had a second-round submission win just in May. I believe it was May of last year over Marcelo Alves, Tyron Pedro, a heel hook submission. So I'm looking back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. His last 6 fights, he won by decision, all round 2, besides one that was in round 1. Cody Stamann is not very submittable, though, so I can see why the odds are justified in this fight, and actually more and more money keeps coming in on Cody Stamann. He is minus 365 right now. Over 2.5 rounds is minus 215 in this fight. Luan's path to victory would probably be by decision in this fight if he was able to stand up to the wrestling of Cody Stamann. Cody Stamann has been submitted one time, and that was to the champ, the future GOAT at 135, none other than Aljamain Sterling. If you're not as high on Aljamain Sterling as I am, it's time to get there. I mean, Aljamain Sterling is absolutely for real, and I pray that the main event in April is him versus Triple C Henry Cejudo. God, just make it happen. UFC, make it happen. The bicep should be good for Sterling for April. He's not ducking Cejudo. It's definitely a tougher fight for Sterling, but it's a fight that I think I would probably be on Aljamain Sterling on, but so much can change. But Luan Lacerda, his path to victory is going to be trying to snatch a submission. And Cody Stamann, his path to victory is going to be wrestling and controlling. A lot of times when you have that grappler versus jiu-jitsu fighter, it just ends up being a boxing match on the feet. I pray to God that doesn't happen because neither have good striking, and I think that would make for this fight might suck. Just a potential for a bad fight. I have a relatively strong play on it, and it's not on a fighter, it's on a round total, so we'll have to see where I end up on that. Shamil is back after getting knocked out by everyone that's even touched him. He got knocked out by Sergey Pavlich, which is not a bad loss to have on your record. Got knocked out in the second round over Chris Dawkins. I mean, sort of a bad loss to have on your record. He did land a couple good shots in that fight. Curtis Blades absolutely grounded him. He's undervalued in this fight, though. Shamil being plus 700 over Jailton Almeida is a little nuts. He's aging. He's 41 years old. But Jailton Almeida has come into this fight hot, 31 years old. Anton Turkoglu over his last fight, he got a rear naked choke in round 1. Parker Porter, rear naked choke finish in round 1. So, again, a fight that's not extremely bettable. If you want to bet the under 1.5 rounds in this fight, you're laying minus 320 right now. And it's probably going to climb a little bit more. Not a fight I'm touching. Very, very unlikely that I would put a play out on a fight like that. If anything, we'll sprinkle some kind of a prop on it. But, chances are Shamil gets finished in the fight, and it's really no surprise. But, maybe Shamil surprises everyone. I just think that Jailton Almeida being 10 years younger and not knocked out in his last 3 fights, relatively easy. It seems like Shamil is just there to finish off his contract. But at the end of the day, he did have a pretty good MMA career, if this is the last fight we've seen. So you never know. He's fighting at home as well. So, like dry. I'm so dry today. But I'm not going to be dry tomorrow night. Next prelim, we have the other Bonfim brother. One that I'm actually a bit higher on. Gabriel Bonfim. He is 13-0, coming off an awesome victory on Dana White's Contender Series. I thought that he looked more impressive in this fight. He submitted Trey Waters by a first-round Von Flue choke. He's been finishing people. His last 3 fights four of his last 5 fights have come by submission, 3 of which in the first round, 1 by knockout. Prior to that, lower level competition. I don't really look at beating an 0-1 or a 1-0 as a significant win that got you to the UFC, but he's been tough. But he does have a tough opponent, Munir Lazzez. He looked really good on the scale today too. He got knocked out by Warley Alves when they fought back in 2021. He only took 1 fight last year, and that was against Ange Lusa. He looked very good in that fight versus Ange Lusa. He came forward. He had a lot of pressure, a lot of technical boxing. He was a minus 185 favorite that we were on at the time, and he did win by decision. I think this is a close fight between Bonfim and Lazzez. I think it's a well-matched fight, and I have a pretty strong play on this fight for tomorrow night. Sign up, guys. www.themmashark.com. See what all the hype's about. People are signing up every day. At this point, it's every hour I'm getting new signups. And, these are people that want to sign up that, A, know how to manage a bankroll, and 2, want to win money, and especially long-term money. Don't buy a subscription if you just want to watch one card and follow along one card because, we profit on 81% of events. And so far this year, it's been 100%. An LFA, an Invicta, and a UFC, 3 cards, 3 profits. So, if you're following along this year, we're closing in on 20 units, 18 to 20 units already. And, we just want to keep doing it. We're just going to keep cashing. And did I mention we have a huge announcement coming in February? Because, my God, do we have a huge announcement coming. And I'm not saying we're announcing it in February and it's coming later this year. What's happening is starting in February. And it's starting like February 4th. I mean, it's something that, I do things that handicappers don't do. One, you saw what myself, my family, and the subscribers did in December when we raised $20,000. We raised 10. It was matched to $20,000 for the Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. If that doesn't speak success, nothing does. Integrity, honesty, that's what we pride ourselves on. People steal my picks and try to steal my picks all the time. And it always gets back to me, and, I'll call out that person and expose them, especially when they're charging money for them. And, everyone that's happened for so far, it hasn't worked out so well. So, just be a normal human being. And if you're going to follow my plays, just sign up for them. I think it's a very fair price. $109 a month is getting you upwards to 14, 15 cards a month. So that's $8 a card. It's a cup of coffee per card. So just think of it that way. If you're drinking 2 beers during the card, that's about my cost for this. And, I'm full-time putting the work into this and during it, before it, after it. And we're crunching numbers and just crushing MMA. RoboCop is taking a fight on short notice, and he's taking on Bruno Ferreira, the Hulk. And Bruno Ferreira is undefeated. He's 9-0. Again, though, another Contender Series alumni taking his first fight in the UFC. He beat Leon Aliou in the Contender Series with a pretty impressive first-round knockout win. We all saw Gregory Rodriguez' last fight against Chidi Njukani. I always mess that up because there is an Njukui too. Chidi was beating the brakes out of RoboCop, and it seems like nothing would have broken RoboCop in that fight. The damage he absorbed in that fight was insane. Other than a split decision loss to Armin Petrosian, RoboCop has been flawless in the UFC. He was unbelievable in LFA, knocking out Josh Freem to get signed. Ultimately, to take a short notice fight versus Dusko Todorovic, and he gets a short notice fight in the UFC, takes on Dusko and beats him. He beat Jung Young Park. He knocked out Julian Marquez, and then again the huge fight versus Chidi. This fight is going to be absolute fireworks between RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez and the Hulk Bruno Ferreira. I'm very excited for this fight, and again, a fight that I think I'm going to smash, but I guess we don't know until after tomorrow night when the plays are released. And then we still have another prelim, believe it or not. This card's just stacked. We have Mauricio Shogun Hua taking on Kiev, Ukraine's Ihor Potieria. This is a close fight. You look at the age, obviously. Mauricio Shogun Hua fighting in Brazil. He is 41 years old. He is the plus 175 underdog in this fight. Ihor Potieria was really, right on the cusp of being a top 15 contender. His last fight, he led off UFC 277 with a fight versus Moreno. I always pronounce that one wrong. If you watch my preview video to UFC 277, I had 17 different variations of Nikolai's last name. But he did not look good in that fight at all. Ihor did not. Nikolai is obviously a prolific striker. He's a stud. He got knocked out in the second round. Shogun is also coming off a loss in his last fight. He lost a split decision over Ovince St. Preux. The alarming thing is that happened 10 months ago, so Shogun has even aged a bit since that. OSP, I'm not really impressed with. He's one of these fighters that just hit a brick wall. Yes, he's 39 years old right now. Other than his win over Shogun, he knocked out Alonzo Menefield in 2020. But I don't know. I'm not that high on OSP. His grappling match versus Andre Petrosky was pretty sick. Andre on Fury FC grappling, Andre was controlling him the whole time. And then OSP almost got him in an armbar as time was expiring. But Shogun versus Potieria, it's a closer fight than people think. I can't see this fight going the distance. I could see a knockout happening. It's a fight I'm going to have a mediocre size play on. But, even if I decide to go against Shogun on this fight, don't sleep against any Brazilian in Brazil. Main card gets started. I hope this main card is half as good as last week's main card because I totally obliterated this main card last week. I couldn't get anything wrong on it. All I got wrong was a prop or two. But, when I'm saying a main card sweep, my main play swept. The data's there. I shared it. I had a couple of people say it was fake. I love when people say my results are fake because I know that I'm doing unmatched results. So, main card kicks off. A very anticipated fight. I guess we can say grappling submission ace, Paul Craig, who actually can throw hands. He may not appear that he always could, Paul Craig, but his strikes are pretty strong. He did knock out Shogun, if you remember seeing that. Obviously, people are known for his triangle, or people know him for his triangles in guard. Do we have a resurging Johnny Walker? I guess we'll find that out tomorrow night. Prior to losing a decision to Thiago Santos, he was knocked out by Jamal Hill 3 minutes into their main event fight last year. He then took on Ian Cutelaba. And Ian Cutelaba is one of the most dangerous fighters in the UFC for the first 30 seconds of a fight. If you survive 30 seconds versus Ian Cutelaba, you're absolutely going to finish him. And the crazy thing is Johnny Walker, and we had Johnny Walker in this fight at a plus 200 underdog, but no one saw a submission coming. He actually gets the submission win. So it's Paul Craig by submission or it's Johnny Walker by knockout, right? Is that right? www.themmashark.com. Very strong lean on that fight. But even if you just watch this because you love MMA, love that fight. Be excited for that fight. 10 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night when the main card comes on and the UFC music starts going and they're going through the card. Just know that waiting in the wings is Paul Craig and Johnny Walker. That card, this main card, the whole card really is fireworks. Outside of some of the debuting Contender Series alumni, because you never know really what you're going to get. 10 p.m. tomorrow night, though, this main card, don't sleep on it. One of my favorite fighters returning on this card, fighting at home, Gilbert Dorino Burns, fresh off his 5-round war with Kazmat Chimaev. I love Dorino. I love Gilbert Burns. He had a very impressive decision win over Wonderboy Thompson prior to that. I thought he looked good versus Kazmat. I really did. I didn't feel like he was ever in danger of getting stopped. He was a little rocked back and forth, but that was a close fight. And, that was by far the toughest test that Cosmot has ever had in his career. Taking on the American here in Neil Magny. Neil Magny is a huge underdog in this fight. And by huge underdog, I'm not talking plus 200. I'm not talking plus 250. This is all the way up to plus 400 right now for Neil Magny. And yes, Neil Magny was finished in his one fight versus Scavat, but Rachmanov is out there just finishing everyone right now. He's a different breed. Jeff hands the stone. Neil, be ready for that fight. I know you got some extra time, but even Neil Magny, though, he's coming into this with a Darce choke submission win over Daniel Rodrigues in a fight that he was arguably down 2-0 in, especially if you look at the way judges score Daniel Rodrigues fights. The judges just love this guy. If he doesn't get knocked out in a round, he wins the round. So Neil Magny did what he had to do in that fight, and that was to get a finish. I personally think this fight's a lot closer than the odds are implying. I don't see how Gilbert Burns is minus 475. I don't see how Neil Magny is plus 400. I'm also not saying that Neil Magny is going to win the fight. Don't comment on this video on Sunday morning and say, oh, the MMA Shark said Neil Magny was going to win the fight. No, I didn't say that. I said I think the odds should be a little bit closer than they are. Moving on, we've got our co-main event and main event. No, we don't. You know what? We've got another fight that I totally forgot about. We've got Jessica Andrade, the returning champion, taking on Lauren Murphy. I think this is an extremely fun fight. I think this is another crazy odd fight. Jessica Andrade right now is minus 500 into this fight. Lucky Lauren Murphy is no joke. I know she's fighting one of the most dangerous Brazilian strikers in Brazil, but she knows how to win fights, and typically it's by split decision. She does have a couple submission wins. She has one knockout win. I don't see her going out there and knocking out Jessica Andrade. I do see her keeping it competitive for as long as it lasts, but I do believe that Jessica Andrade, at 31 years old, is still championship material. She just finished Amanda Lemos and Cynthia Cavallo. We did see, obviously, her lose her title to Valentina, or not lose her title, but lose her opportunity to become a champion again when she lost to Valentina Shevchenko. She lost to Zhang Weili and Rose Namajunas. So, her losses have come to nothing but the best competition. I just think that some less than obvious things are going to happen on this card, whether it's in the Gilbert Burns fight or, whether it's in the Jessica Andrade fight. But it's a UFC pay-per-view in January in Brazil. Something strange will happen on this card, and I think that we'll be on the right side of it. I have a couple ideas where it's going to lay. So, obviously, anyone watching this knows the co-main event is the quadrilogy between Davidson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno. The only differences are Brandon Moreno did have a fight outside of Davidson Figueiredo in the last 4 years. We saw the brutal liver kick he landed to Kai Kara France. He's 29 years old. He's coming into this fight out of Glory MMA, but not out of Glory MMA. He had to switch some things up, considering James Krause could not be cornering him for this fight. It is the first time. James Krause will not be cornering him versus Davidson Figueiredo. Davidson, tough man. He's fighting at home. He called for this fight in Brazil when he defeated Moreno last time. He beat him by a unanimous decision. If this fight goes to the judges, it's scary because it's in Brazil. I think Moreno's got some advantages, and I think that Davidson's got some advantages in this fight. As far as the finishing side, Figgy can absolutely win this fight by knockout. On his end, on Moreno's end, he can end this fight either way, submission or knockout. The odds are implying that this fight's going all 5 rounds. We'll see where this goes. I have already sent out a 6-unit play on this fight to my subscribers. So if you do sign up for the MMA Shark and you're watching this video, send me a message through the texting service that after you get your welcome text, because you did miss one play already. The line has not really moved since, so there is still time to get the value where I see the value in the co-main event. But yes, I do have a 6-unit play on Figgy versus Moreno. The main event of the evening, Glover Teixeira has been in camp for basically 19 weeks now. He was 3 weeks undone from his camp to get a second shot at Yuri Prohaska, a fight that he was pretty much dominating. And I mean, I say dominating in the sense that he was a massive underdog hanging in that fight and winning rounds. He got submitted in the 5th round of that fight, which sucked because we were on Teixeira in that fight. But now he has to take on the new blood in Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill has been crushing the competition that's been in front of him. Sweet Dreams, the nickname, has lived up to the hype. Every win he has had in the UFC, other than his first fight after being signed off Contender Series versus Darko Socic, has been by knockout. Abreu, OSP, Jimmy Crute, brutal right hook over Jimmy Crute in the first round. Brutal right hand to Johnny Walker in the first round. And then he knocked out Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos is no easy out, but neither is Glover Teixeira. All signs are pointing toward Jamal Hill knocking out Glover Teixeira. Everyone thinks that's going to happen. All the broadcasters, all the analysts are saying, Jamal Hill just is going to hop on this plane and fly from Michigan to Brazil and just knock out Glover Teixeira cold and walk out of that cage with the belt. The best thing I can say to that is www.themmashark.com. I'm confident in my main event play, my main event prop, my main event total. Jamal Hill is coming into this fight on absolute fire. Glover Teixeira is getting old. Glover's getting old, so anything can happen in this fight. Glover obviously has some really good submission ability. Jamal Hill, he's not bad on the ground. Don't look at the fight versus Paul Craig and say, oh, he was submitted. Jamal Hill was actually posting in that fight and broke his arm. He had no choice but to tap in that fight. He didn't tap due to being in submission choice of going unconscious. His arm was literally broken. And Jamal showed how tough he is by rebounding and coming back as quickly as he did. But, you got Alex Breja, Teixeira Fitness, they're coming into this hot. So, one bold prediction I will make, the winner of this fight will not be the champion in the 205-pound division by the end of the year. And I don't think that Jan Blachowicz is going to be on the sidelines for long. I think he's going to get a shot at the winner. I think he deserves a shot at the winner. But we'll see what happens. UFC 283 tomorrow night. Check out www.themmashark.com. Sign up, get all my picks. It's a rolling 30 days, so you don't just get the plays for now till the end of January with that half-off month. You get a full 30 days, and then you would automatically renew. My rate's $109. Right now, you're getting half off, so www.themmashark.com. Half off. No-brainer. UFC's coming up every weekend besides next weekend. Bellator returns, LFA, Cage Warriors, PFL Challenger Series comes back on the 20th. So much MMA, so many tickets to cash. So until then, I always say, let's get it.